Hi and welcome back to our plant-based comfort food series. This is episode 2 and today I'm going to share my recipe for deliciously brothy beans. First of all, thanks to all of you that watched the last video where I made tomato risotto. I really appreciate you guys tuning in, and many thanks to those of you who bought our ebook since we shared the discount link. Really hope you enjoy it and get lots of use out of it. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about now, I will leave a link to our ebook Comfort in the description box. But enough about that now, because we are going to get into beans here, and you could really use any type of dried bean that you like to make this recipe, but I recommend and will be using small white beans. They look like this when you buy them. They are very small, hard and dry, so the first thing that needs doing, I think, is some soaking. Now everyone doesn't agree with me on this, but I think it helps to shorten the cooking time, and for those of us who have sensitive stomachs, it helps to get rid of some of the anti-nutrients that are in beans. Many anti-nutrients you see are water soluble, and many anti-nutrients in beans particularly are in the skin. So when you soak the beans, they sort of get out of the bean, making them a little better for sensitive stomachs. So I like to soak mine overnight at least, or for 24 hours if I can remember. And I've got some prepared here that I soaked yesterday at around this time. As you can see, they have plumped up quite a bit from their time in this bath of sort of semi-warm water, which is fab. I usually add some salt to my soaking water as well, as the beans really draw up so much moisture already in this process, and I think that is a great reason to start seasoning them, because why not, right? Now that I've given you the lowdown on the beans themselves, I think we should get into the brothy part of this recipe. But before we do that, I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video and tell you a little bit more about them. Squarespace is an all-in-one website builder with lots of great tools to create a beautiful and well-functioning website without any prior knowledge of coding or website building. Their Fluid Engine design system offers great customizable templates that will suit your style and brand. For example, they offer great blogging tools which allow you to share your stories, photos, and videos, as well as schedule your posts as you wish. You can also use Squarespace to set up your own online store, whether you sell physical, digital, or service products. I use Squarespace for my online photography portfolio and really enjoy how easy and intuitive it is to use the drag and drop technology to bring my creative ideas to life. So if you're thinking about creating a website for your project, check out squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch your site, go to squarespace.com/goodeatings for 10% off your first website or domain. Okay, so the broth. This way of cooking beans is something that has just elevated my bean cooking and eating experience, because it makes them so yummy. I simply make a broth and cook the beans at the same time, giving me two delicious things to eat together or separately that are both bursting with flavor. It's genius actually. Unfortunately, I can't take credit for coming up with this, because similar recipes are all over the internet, and I'm sure this has been done for ages in some cultures before the internet was even on the scene. Anyway, let's start making the base for the broth, and for this I've got 1 onion, 1 shallot, 1 garlic bulb, and all I'm going to do is just make sure they are clean and then half them. When making the broth, there's no need to peel the alliums. You can simply leave it on after making sure it's clean. Leaving the skin on is particularly important for the garlic, as it will help keep all the cloves together once you've cut it. Next, I heat up 2-3 tablespoons of olive oil in my Dutch oven. You just want the oil to coat the bottom nicely, and then I'm going to fry the alliums in the oil. So while the alliums are getting some nice caramelization on them, I will prep the other ingredients that will bring lots of goodness to the broth. And I'm going to start by just chopping up this carrot into some chunks. You want all the vegetables going into the broth to be chunky so that they don't fall apart while you're cooking. That way you can fish them out easily once the broth is done. To go along with the veggies, I'm also adding some fresh herbs. Here I've got some fresh thyme as well as some fresh rosemary, but you could add any hardy herb that you like the flavor of. Scallions have been frying for about 5-6 minutes. It's time to flip them over, and as you can see, they have a really nice golden color at this point. And that's when I'm adding in my carrots, my herbs, as well as 1 stalk of celery, which is great for adding a nice flavor to broths. Again, you just want to fry these until they have a nice golden color on the one side, and then flip them over and fry them until they are golden on the other side. And this will take about 3-4 minutes per side. In the meantime, I usually drain my beans that have been soaking for long enough at this point. And for this recipe that serves about 6 to 8 people, I have soaked 2 cups of dry beans. Alright, so it's looking good in here now, and if you wish to add a little grown-up touch to your beans, then I can recommend adding a splash of dry white wine to them now that the veggies are looking nice and golden. I usually only add a small amount, so about 1/4 cup, but you can play around with the amount to your liking. Now, some people say that you can't really taste the wine when they cook with everything else, but in this recipe, I think you can definitely taste it to some extent, and of course, it makes a difference to the finished product. So taste your way to your perfect brothy bean. Maybe you like it with or without. Rob is more in the with camp, and I actually prefer without normally. If you are using it though, you want to allow it to simmer for a couple of minutes with the alliums and the other bits that have gone in the broth, just to cook it down a little bit and mellow it out. Now I'd say we have a great base for the broth, and frying the veggies before you add your water really does add another dimension of flavor, I think. It's just more rich and has another level of depth. Now for the 2 cups of dry beans we started with, I'm adding 7 cups of water. Of course, some of this water will cook off, but most of it will make the broth. But we're not done with adding flavor to this broth yet though. I'm also going to pop in some bay leaves as well as some black peppercorn. You can use 2 to 3 normal sized bay leaves, or if you have giant ones like me, 2 will do. I'm also adding in about 6 or 7 peppercorns, as well as 2 tablespoons of vegetable stock powder, just to help the broth along and add some saltiness. Once all the ingredients for the broth are well combined, I add in the drained beans and I turn the heat up to high to bring it all to a boil. So once the pot of beans are boiling, I'm turning them down pretty low so that it just simmers gently as they cook. If you boil the beans too hard, you might shorten the cooking time, but you are also likely to end up with some mushy beans in the pot at the end. And I think at least most of us prefer them nice and plump, but intact when it's all said and done. So a gentle simmer it is now for about an hour, but you might find that your beans need more or less time. The longer the dried beans have been sitting in storage somewhere, the longer it will take to cook usually. But when I use mine in a reasonable time after purchasing them, it usually takes a little less than an hour for them to cook. In the meantime, I might enjoy some tea, and I'm also going to make some yummy garlic bread to go with it. Easiest garlic bread in the world, simply toast some bread. Here I have Rob's sourdough, drizzle it with some good olive oil, and then rub raw garlic right onto the bread. It will be really potent and delicious and perfect for dipping into the brothy beans. The beans have now been cooking for about 50 minutes, so I'm going to start tasting them from this point to see if they're tender, and when they are, I take them off the heat and remove all the bits we added to flavor the broth. This time my beans were almost overcooked at the 50-minute mark, so maybe it's better advised to start checking them at 35-40 minutes. You never know if you're gonna get super fresh beans. Okay, so now that we've fished all the bits out of here, there's actually an opportunity to add some other ingredients before you serve up. I think the most popular must be greens, and they wilt really nicely into the broth and add another nice texture to the finished dish. My favorite green to add is Cavolo Nero, also known as dino kale. It really has become my go-to hearty green these last couple of years. But today I'm just going to serve the beans as they are with my very simple garlic bread. the end there's an opportunity to add some more components to the dish. Pesto is really nice dolloped into a bowl like this, but anything you can think of goes, I think, as a topping to these types of beans in a broth. I do really like them very plain like this though, because really they're not plain at all. There is so much complexity in that broth from all the goodies we cook the beans alongside. I really hope you'll try this. I realize it isn't the quickest of recipes, but it really doesn't require that much active cooking time. Mainly it just requires you to hang around while it does its own thing, and then at the end you have beans for a whole family, a dinner with friends, or to store in the fridge for the week ahead. So yeah, that was my little sales pitch for cooking my own beans. I do thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next week, hopefully, for episode 3 of this plant-powered comfort food series. Take care now.